There we are. Not muted. Hi, guys. Cool. All right. Sweet. This has gone much better than last time, than Wednesday. So, questions anybody has? Are there any good examples of educational games you've found since your TEDx talk? What you talked about is pretty obvious when given some thought, yet in the general game market, few if any games seem to do this. Yeah, so specifically this that you're talking about, as I kind of touched on, I don't know if I actually touched on it in this stream or not, there are a couple different ways that you can try to make educational games, and they kind of generally correspond to what I would call gamification and systems learning. Gamification is when you take sort of an activity that you want people to engage in and attach points to it, and essentially say, like, okay, if you do the thing, you will get rewards. This is the like, we often refer to it as the Math Blasters approach. The idea behind Math Blasters is we want you to solve some math problems. So, or we want you to learn math, right? Let's be clear. The high level objective is we want you to learn math. And the way we're going to approach that is, here is a set of math problems. If you solve them, I will let you play a game for a few minutes. And that's what Math Blasters was. And Math Blasters, I think, still exists as a product. I don't mean to disparage it. I have no idea what it looks like today. But you know, the original Math Blasters, that's what it was. And that works for some people. Like, some people, you know, don't want to do math problems because it's boring, but if you promise that I'll get to play a game at the end of it, and like there's a structure in place that actually enforces that, then I'll do the thing that I don't want to do because I'm excited about the thing that I want. But more than it succeeds, it fails. This is also what I call the chocolate-covered broccoli approach, and that's, chocolate-covered broccoli is not my term, but it's the term that I like, because I really am intrigued by the concept of chocolate-covered broccoli, which is meant to incentivize you to eat your broccoli, but really just ruins chocolate. And that's what I feel like a lot of that traditional approach to educational games does, gamification. The other way to approach educational games is systems learning. And that's where you take the thing that you want somebody to learn, you break it down into dynamic systems, and then you implement a simulation of those systems in a game that asks the player to experiment with the simulation, with the system, so that the play of the game is actually intrinsically tied to understanding how the system works. Antichamber is a great example of this. Now, if there were a high-level educational goal that was understanding the relationship between, you know, guns and cubes, or even if this was an abstraction of like mathematical way of thinking, framework or something like that, which I don't know that it is. Maybe it is. I don't know math that well. But if there was an educational goal around, like, we want people to understand how these systems work, Antichamber is a great way of teaching that, because the game is fun. I'm playing the game because I like the game. And in order to progress in the game, I have to learn things about how all of these systems interact. So if that's your goal as a game designer and an educator, then mission accomplished. Like, that's what I'm doing. So back to the question. The question was, are there any examples of educational games that do this well, and why aren't there more of them? I I ought to be able to rattle off a list of games that do this well. There are some, but I don't have them in my in RAM. I'd have to sort of think about or do some research. I could find a list if that's something that people are interested in. Poke me on the forum, and I'll try to come up with stuff, or we can brainstorm stuff together. Because there are definitely games that do this well, and there are. I mean, it's a continuum too, right? There are games that do a little of both things and do some stuff well and some stuff that include both of these different aspects in different ways. The only thing that is coming immediately to mind, because I work in the lab with it every day, is Walden. Obviously, the projects that I work on, I focus a lot on educational games, and this is something that we try really hard to do with the educational games that we make. So that aside, there's another game in the lab that I don't work on, that I haven't worked on in 4 or 5 years, called Walden. And Walden is a really, really exciting project that is sort of Tracy Fullerton's passion project. She's the director of my lab. She's the chair of the division at USC that I went to school for. And she was a mentor for me when I went through my master's program. And she has been working for a number of years on a project that is essentially a digital version of an adaptation of Henry David Thoreau's Walden. Kyla, if you're still in the chat, Kyla has worked on this project extensively, so she knows exactly what I'm talking about. Walden is trying to teach people who maybe haven't read Walden. They're trying to teach them about the book, but more than that, like trying to teach them the philosophy that underlies the book. Walden is a book about Henry David Thoreau, who went off to a pond outside of Concord, Massachusetts, and lived there for a couple of years. Built himself like a little cabin, and went fishing, and planted some beans, and tried to like live just in the woods, and not be a part of the rat race, not be like a part of a town life, to sort of try to just understand what life was by being off by himself in the woods. There are a lot of problems with that, I think, as an approach to philosophy, or to understanding the world. But whatever, that's what he did, and he got a lot out of it, and he wrote a book, and the book also, it can be problematic in places, but it's also very insightful, and it's got a lot of good stuff about life and balance and that kind of thing. And so we wanted to sort of like create that, teach that. And so we do that by, I say we, the lab, Tracy and her group, have done that by creating a simulation of the pond, and a game where you walk in Thoreau's footsteps and you live out by the pond for a while. It's kind of a survival game, but without zombies. You just have to live in the woods, and the systems that underlie the game are all about, first of all, how do you survive, and then secondly, how do you sort of find inspiration? How do you write the book that Thoreau wrote while he was out there? And you have to kind of live through it. You have to experiment with the world in order to understand what the world looked like from Thoreau's perspective, and what his philosophy was, in order to succeed in the game. So There's a great example of a game that you can't play because it's not out yet. I should probably come up with some better examples of games that actually exist. That's cutting. Sorry, Walden team. Walden is due to launch sometime this year, I'm pretty sure. But there are also games that are out there that are educational games. Now, why aren't there more of them? I'm just going to talk about educational games this whole Q&A. Sorry, anybody who doesn't care about educational games. Why aren't there more educational games? That's a great question, and it has a lot to do with the way that education gets funded. The way that education gets funded is that that's really complicated. A lot of it is funded through government programs, and then some of it is funded through schools, and then a lot of it sort of, some of it gets funded through parents, but all of these markets are really difficult to access. So I have experience doing government projects in educational work. They're great, but they're really focused on proving out research. So like getting to the point where you can answer the question, can we make an educational game around this topic and how effective is it? The government programs that I have been involved with have very, very little interest. Actually, not even just government projects, government and private projects around education have very little interest in actually seeing those games to their audience, get into schools. So all the games that I've made have stayed very, very, small stature. They haven't gotten out, and we're working with a couple of them to try to find like distribution partners and ways to get them out into the hands of kids. Or, depending on the age group, some of them are for high school students and that kind of thing. And that's, but that's a challenge. That's really hard to do, and it's expensive. And similarly, targeting schools or school districts is really difficult because there's a lot of bureaucracy around that, and there are a lot of ways that those systems work. So what I'm saying is that in general, it's hard to get educational games funded and made. Specifically, the kinds of educational games that, I want to see, it's harder to get those made because they're more expensive. They're harder to produce. Math Blasters is really easy because we've got like 1 million math questions and we've got 1 million video games. And if you just can like take Space Invaders and say, do these math problems and you get to play Space Invaders, like that's easy. That's cheap. If you want to create a game where you say like, well, let's break down what math is into dynamic systems that we can simulate and create a game experience that will encourage players to learn gradually with increasing complexity those systems so that they will learn math. Refraction. Refraction is a great example of a game that does it. I think it's an iOS game. It's probably also on the web. Check out a game called Refraction. It's a math game about learning fractions using lasers and spaceships. Great example of a game that does this well. I can promise you that game was much more expensive to produce than a game of similar production values that used just a gamification method. So one of the problems is that the people who are in charge of funding these projects and greenlighting these projects are not game designers, they're educators. And I love educators, they're great, but they don't necessarily understand the distinction between these two things. And they're not always interested in the distinction between these two things. They're just interested in having something that will engage their students, as they should be. And sometimes the gamification stuff will engage students, and when that works, it's great, but it depends a lot on the teacher. And just in general, it's not as effective overall. At least, I really truly believe. So if you go to somebody who doesn't really understand the difference between the two games and you say, I can give you Math Blaster and it's going to cost you, $30,000, or I can give you Refraction and it's going to cost you $130,000 or $500,000, those people are going to take Math Blaster. And that's how a lot of those games get made. Ditto parents. Like, if you there's a place where the bar is I want an educational game for my kids. I want to teach them math. And then there's sort of a higher bar that is I want a game that's going to be really effective. And if you can the margins work out better just hitting that lower bar. You don't sell to as many parents maybe, and you don't help as many kids, but you can make more money on it. So I think that's pretty much why there aren't more really good educational games. And I think that's going to change gradually as an understanding of games and an understanding of these kinds of concepts intrinsically. I mean, the question sort of says that this differentiation between chocolate-covered broccoli and systems-based learning is pretty obvious if you give it some thought. Yeah, well, but you're a gamer. Like, games, you play games. There's a generation of people, and more than just a generation, there's just a lot of people who don't have the same kind of exposure to games, don't have that kind of game literacy, and so it's not as obvious to them. And I think as games become just more and more ubiquitous in our culture, and there's a better understanding and appreciation for what good games are across the board by everybody, because everybody plays games, this is going to become more obvious to more people, and gradually it's going to change. We're going to expect more from our educational games. Okay, I spent a really long time answering a question that was not about Antichamber, which is fine, but I talked a lot. Here's another question. Do you feel like the green gun is badly introduced? Seems like some people, including me, did not fully grasp the concepts even after completing the game. Well, that's such an interesting question. Seems like some people, including you, and also including me, have not fully grasped the concepts behind the green game, or the green gun. But I don't know that that's necessary. Like, solving the puzzles to get to the yellow gun, I understood the green gun well enough to do that. Now, if the game has an implicit model of what the player's understanding of the systems is. Understanding is? Yeah, that's... I can speak English. So when you're designing a game, especially pretty much any game, I was going to say an educational game, but if we think about Rafe Koster and the theory of fun, every game is an educational game. Every game is an educational game. It's just that the thing that a game usually teaches is how to play the game, which isn't necessarily education that's useful outside of the game context. But you can think about any game as an educational game if you think about the thing that it's teaching being how to play the game. So Antichamber is teaching us how to play Antichamber. When you design the game, you sort of lay out what is the progression through the game that the player is going to take, what things are they going to see when, and then model implicitly or explicitly, may be written down, or you may just be sort of doing it. But as you go, you're imagining what is it that the player understands at this point. So, you know, before I get the green gun, I have no idea how the green gun works. I think that's a good example. So before I get to the green gun, I have no idea how the green gun works. I've never seen it before. I get the green gun, and now I still have no idea how it works because I've never used it. So the first puzzle that they give me is going to want to be really, really basic. It's going to be something that's like very simple, that introduces a fundamental concept about how the green gun works. And then once I've completed that puzzle, the understanding, the model of my understanding of the game improves. Like now I have an understanding of that concept. And so the next puzzle can build on that concept and introduce something that's a little bit more complicated, or introduce something new, or make me take two things that I've done before and use them together in a way that's not obvious. This is sort of how you design progressive puzzles. So could be, because I haven't finished the game yet, could be that there's going to be a puzzle coming up where I use the yellow gun to do something that the green gun could have done that I should have learned how to do with the green gun, and I didn't learn how to do with the green gun. In which case, the designer's model of what my understanding of the game is at that point has broken. I don't understand all of the things that the designer believes I understand. And that's a problem, right? When the designer's model of what the player is experiencing breaks. But I don't see any indication that that's going to happen, actually. Like, I'm learning how to do new things with the yellow gun. And like I said, I have a functional understanding of the green gun. Like I can't 100% predict how it's going to work. And if I study it enough, I probably will get to that point. But as it stands, I'm just kind of like, I understand it well enough to solve the problems that it's given me. And that's fine. Like, if I don't need more than that to complete the game, and the designer's model of what my understanding is doesn't ask me to necessarily progress past that point, then there's no problem. It's only if, as a player, I'm driven to a complete understanding beyond what the game actually asks of me, that I start to run into an experiential problem, and then I get frustrated because I don't understand something and I just want to understand it. But actually, the game might not be requiring me to understand it, and I think that would be fine. Of what I've played so far, I don't think anything has been badly introduced. The only problem that I have with what I've played so far, I mean, I talked about sort of feeling a little bit lost at the beginning of this, of tonight, and that's a minor problem, but I got through it pretty quickly, actually. And then, so the only problem that I have is that I appear to have solved a puzzle that I wasn't supposed to solve before, like I was supposed to be able to solve it. And that, I think, is a problem, especially in a game where it's like very tricksy about the kinds of like things that you can do, and there are puzzles and things that are, I mean, you know, like it's not clear what order you're supposed to solve things in, and so either I'm wrong and that's actually you know, that is a I was supposed to be able to do that, and I don't know what's going on with it. It just feels weird, or it really is kind of a bug, and then that's a problem. But that's a bug problem more than a design problem. Okay, what do you think of the color coding of the puzzles in this game? The blocks seem to be roughly correspondent to the color of the gun that solves them, although obviously you can skip sometimes if you're clever, since you just solved a red block puzzle with the yellow gun. Has the coloration been helpful, or has it gone unnoticed? It has been helpful, and it hasn't gone unnoticed, but it also hasn't been quite as like synchronized as you're describing it. For example, the way that you word this question makes me think that there is a red gun, and I haven't seen the red gun yet, and didn't especially expect that there was a red gun. There were definitely... Well, so here's how it has worked for me. When I got the blue gun, there were just cubes, and all of the cubes that I got turned blue. There didn't seem to be much difference between them. When I got the green gun, it almost felt like blue and green cubes were completely different types of cubes. And I think that if I had said that out loud, if I had articulated that at the time, that was just silly, because I picked up some blue cubes and they turned green. I mean, I think they're exactly the same. But I was dealing like exclusively with green cubes at that point. Green cubes are just... Yeah, that's how it felt, at least. That's not entirely true. It wasn't until I got the yellow gun that I really kind of realized that, hey, there's a bunch of different guns, and there's a bunch of different types of cubes, and the cubes are kind of color-coded to what I'm going to do. I guess, so with the green, I guess it worked really well. I just didn't, like, encounter... I just ignored all of the blue stuff. I was focused totally on green. With yellow... I mean, there was one point where I ran into a big yellow wall with my green gun, and decided like not to push it, to not like keep trying to do it. And I think I could have like butted my head against that longer. And maybe if I had run out of like other things to do, if I had gotten stuck other places and come back there, I would have butted my head against it longer. But the fact that it was yellow and everything that I was dealing with was green, I think strongly suggested to me that I should look elsewhere. And then where it really, really clicked for me was I got the yellow gun, I went back there, and I was like, oh yeah! This wall is made out of yellow cubes. I bet I'm supposed to go through there now. I think it's worked very well. I think it's weird that if there is a red gun and I'm not supposed to be doing red stuff until I get the red gun, that I was able to solve that red puzzle. I feel like that was a slip up. That was, you know, that puzzle wasn't carefully enough designed, or the distinction between the yellow and the red guns wasn't carefully enough designed, that I could actually like accidentally solve that puzzle using the wrong gun. I will probably play through Portal at some point, because Portal is just great and we should just play through Portal. But there's a point in Portal where you can do something similar. You can sort of skip a puzzle. You can bypass it if you're clever. And the story behind that is that one of the playtesters figured it out and did it, and the designers were so impressed that they didn't fix it. They just let it sort of stay in the game, and now that's how I play that puzzle every time. But it's not conceptual. It doesn't allow you to skip like a concept. It only allows you to skip some sort of execution. So you still have to understand everything that you're supposed to understand. You still have to match the model of your understanding that the designer has at that point in the level. You just kind of can skip out on some stuff that you have to execute. All right, I'm going to do probably just one more question. What do you think the purpose of the hint pictures are, considering the vast majority of them are presented to you at the end of the puzzle almost like a reward? However, we saw today that some of them are presented at the start of the puzzle. Why do you think this is? So I talked a little bit about this on Wednesday when a lot of people weren't here and didn't see me because the, Wednesday. But I think I'd be really interested to fully explore this game because I still don't have a complete understanding of the game. I'm still pretty much at the same place where I was on Wednesday, but I think it's a combination of two things. One of them is when you solve a puzzle, it's kind of an affirmation of the thing that you just did. And actually, oh God, this is great. This is great because I wasn't thinking about it this way before. I was thinking about it kind of as a reward, right? Like you get to the other side of a puzzle and here's a nice little aphorism that the game gives you that's cute and basically says good job, right? It's a reward. The other thing that it does is it reasserts what is the concept that you had to learn in order to get past that puzzle. So even if I kind of stumble through a puzzle, the learning that happens through puzzle solving is going to be clarified for me by the quote on the other side of the puzzle. It's going to say I don't remember what any of them are because I have a terrible memory, but it's gonna say sometimes you have to keep on pushing when I had to push through a wall. And then if it wasn't clear to me, if it wasn't perfectly crystal clear to me that the way that I solved that puzzle was by pushing through the wall, was through persistence, then this is gonna capstone that. This is gonna really make it crystal clear. Which I think helps the learning. I think that it's almost a review. It's almost okay, so what have we learned? Which is great. That's a really, really useful tactic. The other thing that I think it might do is that I think there is some amount of nonlinearity to this game, and it's really hard for me to figure out how much. I think there are some places where I can get to a puzzle from more than one direction. And then if I approach it from the most likely direction, from the earliest direction, then I don't get a hint. I just have to solve it. But if I approach it from the other direction, then I get a hint that tells me, hey, you didn't solve this puzzle back when we thought you were going to. Did you have trouble with it? Here's maybe a clue that will help you. Now, why you need to solve the puzzle when you're already on the other side of it, I'm not sure. Although it does help you navigate the space faster, and the fact that there's a timer at the beginning of the game suggests to me that on some level, somebody cares how fast you go through it. So maybe it's that. Okay, I think that's it. I'm gonna go. I might have some Jell-O. I'm excited about that prospect. Thanks guys for hanging out with me. This was a lot of fun. It's so much more fun when it actually works. That's super exciting. And these were great questions. And there were a bunch of other questions that if you still want to ask, hit me up on Twitter at ndef, or come to the community forum, undefinedbehavior.com/forum, and ask questions there, engage the rest of the community. I try to weigh in on stuff when I can, or bring it back for the next Q&A, which will be on Wednesday. Yeah. All right. Thanks again, and have a great night. Bye. Oh, there we go.